What if the Mongol Empire never collapsed? In the early 13th century, the world witnessed the rise of the largest land empire in human history, the Mongol Empire. At its height, it stretched from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe, from China to the Middle East, from Siberia to the gates of Vienna. It connected civilizations that had never been connected before. But within a century, the empire fractured. Civil wars, succession disputes, cultural divisions, and eventually the Mongol Empire collapsed. Now imagine something different. What if it never collapsed? What if the Mongol Empire survived, adapted, and still existed today? How would the world look? To answer that, we must first understand what the Mongol Empire truly was. The Mongol Empire at its peak. The Mongol Empire was not just large, it was fast, organized, and terrifyingly efficient. Under Genghis Khan, the Mongols united nomadic tribes into a single force. They used mobility as a weapon, psychological warfare as strategy, and intelligence as power. But conquest was only the beginning. After conquering, the Mongols ruled. They protected trade routes, standardized laws, encouraged religious tolerance. Merchants could travel safely across thousands of miles. This period became known as the Pax Mongolica, peace under Mongol rule. Now imagine this system never breaking apart. Why the Mongol Empire collapsed? The Mongol Empire did not fall because of a single enemy. It collapsed from within. Succession crises after the death of powerful khans, rivalries between heirs. The empire split into khanates, the Yuan dynasty in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Golden Horde in Russia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia. Over time, these regions grew apart. Different cultures, different religions, different priorities. Now imagine a different path. Imagine the Mongols solve succession. Imagine centralized authority survives. Imagine reform instead of fragmentation. A unified Mongol superstate. If the Mongol Empire survived, it would have to evolve. Pure conquest would no longer work. Administration would matter more than armies. The empire could become a federal superstate. Local rulers governing regions, a central Khan overseeing unity, laws standardized, trade protected, cultures allowed autonomy. This would not be a barbarian empire. It would be a global governing system. Global trade under a surviving Mongol Empire. One of the biggest impacts would be trade. The Mongols already controlled the Silk Road. If the empire survived, global trade would explode centuries earlier. China, Europe, India, the Middle East, and Africa would remain deeply connected. Technologies would spread faster. Gunpowder, printing, navigation, medicine. The age of exploration might never happen the same way. Europe would not need to find sea routes around Mongol territory. Columbus might never sail. The Americas might remain isolated for much longer. Technology and science. A unified Mongol Empire would accelerate innovation. Scientists from different cultures working together. Chinese engineering, Persian mathematics, Islamic medicine, European metallurgy. Knowledge would flow freely. The Renaissance could happen earlier, or in a completely different place. Maybe not in Italy, maybe in Samarkand, or Beijing, or Baghdad. Human progress could speed up by centuries. Religion in a Mongol world. The Mongols were famously tolerant of religion. They practiced shamanism but allowed all faiths. Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Taoism. If the empire survived, religious wars might reduce. No crusades as we know them. No forced conversions at scale. Faith would exist under state neutrality. This could change the entire religious map of the world. Europe without Mongol collapse. Europe would be very different. The Mongols reached Eastern Europe but withdrew due to internal politics. If they stayed unified, Europe might face long-term Mongol dominance. Feudal systems could collapse early. Kings would answer to a global empire. National identities might never fully form. There might be no modern nation-states as we know them. Instead, regions inside a global system. Russia and the Mongol Empire. Russia already lived under Mongol rule for centuries. If the empire survived, Russia might never become independent. No Tsarist Russia. No Soviet Union. No Cold War as we know it. Eastern Europe's history would completely change. China under permanent Mongol rule. The Mongols ruled China as the Yuan dynasty. If they held power longer, China's development would change. Confucian bureaucracy would mix with Mongol governance. China might remain outward-looking instead of turning inward. Global exploration could be led by Asia, not Europe. The Islamic world. The Mongols devastated parts of the Islamic world, but later they converted to Islam and ruled peacefully. A surviving empire could unify Muslim lands without colonial borders. The Middle East would avoid fragmentation. Many modern conflicts might never exist. The Americas and Africa. Without European colonial expansion, the Americas might remain independent longer. Indigenous civilizations could continue developing. Africa might avoid centuries of colonization. Global inequality could look very different. Modern politics. In a Mongol world, a surviving Mongol empire would be the first true global power. No United States as global hegemon. No European dominance. Power would be centralized across continents. Modern international law might emerge earlier. Global governance might feel normal, not experimental. Would this world be peaceful? Here is the hard truth. A unified empire does not eliminate conflict. It changes where conflict happens. Rebellions would exist. Cultural resistance would grow. Some regions would demand independence. Freedom and control would constantly clash, but many wars between states would disappear. Civil wars replace world wars, the price of a never-collapsing empire. Progress would be faster, but diversity might shrink. Local cultures could be absorbed or erased. Innovation might slow under too much stability. Empires create order, but order can limit creativity. What this scenario teaches us: the collapse of the Mongol Empire led to fragmentation. Fragmentation led to competition. Competition led to innovation, but also violence. A surviving empire could bring stability, but at the cost of freedom. History is balance. Final question. So, what if the Mongol Empire never collapsed? The world would be more connected, more unified, more centralized. Technology would advance faster. Religion would be more tolerant. Colonialism might never happen, but individuality might suffer. Local identity might weaken. History would not be better or worse, just different. And that reminds us of something important. Civilizations don't collapse because they are weak. They collapse because they fail to adapt. And survival in any era belongs to those who evolve.